Hi folks, happy to have you here on the AX Semantics meetup channel. Here you will find every 14 days our latest video from our meetup where we're discussing with experts and customers about the opportunities of content automation. If you have any questions, just write it in the comments. We will answer them as soon as possible. And don't forget to subscribe our channel. Then we will see you next time here on this channel.
2:02. I'm truly delighted that Kai has been available. You can see because he's wearing a scarf that he has a cold. Who hasn't a cold these days? And we're going to look at how Kofferworld works with AX Semantics. I think that there have been some minor hurdles we had to overcome and some nice successes. Kofferworld is ranking on my favorite list of favorites. Who was here 2 weeks ago knows that Kofferworld has become one of my favorite projects, also because of the tremendous SEO environment success. But I don't want to anticipate things. Can you please introduce yourself, Kai? Share your screen, tell us who you are, and we're going to listen to your presentation. And then, as usually, we have time for questions. Please ask questions, and if you feel like it, I will also ask some questions. And the members of the audience, if you have questions, you can also write them down in the chat, and we'll try to answer all the questions that might arise. Kai, please. Good afternoon. I hope you can see my presentation. Yes, we can see it very well. Thank you. There's also a slide included about me. This is where I'm going to start at the beginning. The title of today's presentation is From Data Case to Successful Product Descriptions, Automated Content Generation. What that means, I'm going to share it with you in the next 30 minutes. First of all, who is Kofferworld? We're not that big yet. This is why I think it's exciting to know who we are. We have a stationary retail background. Lederwaren Hallerstede is a company that has been existing for more than 180 years. In Oldenburg, it's really a traditional company with all the advantages and disadvantages. We have 3 stores in Oldenburg and 1 in the neighboring city, which is called Bad Zwischenahn. We're active in different areas, leather products, suitcases, also a Neo Kids store, that's the name of it. Everything that you need when you start school. And then we have an outlet and another store in Bad Zwischenahn, where mostly we sell handbags. We've been present in online retail for 14 years, particularly in the last years, because the last 3 years, as the company name tells it, there were some crises because Koffer means suitcase. We are owner managed in the 6th generation, and we are very proud of it. In the digital environment, oftentimes people might be tempted to think that can't work, but we have a management team that is very open for the digital world. We have a very good exchange, and we can drive many different projects very well. And as a company that has a long tradition, well, we are benefiting from long-standing partnerships with suppliers. The relations have been existing for decades in some instances, and we have the advantage that we can try out new things and find new partners, and very good partners. This is our main building in the city center. It looks very nice. The new facade has been ready for 4 years now. And if you go to Oldenburg city center, you can see it, and it's very beautiful and invites to come in. Who am I? I was born in 1987 in Oldenburg. I've been working in online marketing since 2011. I also worked in and studied in the Netherlands, marketing management, and I was interested in online focus, which wasn't that well known as a course of study as it is today. Since 2016, I've taken roots in Oldenburg. I bought a house. there, and I'm very happy. And I've been working as a freelancer in Cologne, Berlin. This is where I've been working. And after my studies, I had a lot of experience that I gained in marketing. For instance, I've been working for Kofferworld since 2020. I worked for agencies prior to that. And as you can tell, I started when the pandemic came about. This means that I had a lot of crisis management I needed to tackle at the beginning. But we turned what was necessary in something we enjoyed, and we got away from the focus we had on traveling and discovered other segments and tapped them. Since 2022, I've been the head of online marketing since the beginning of the year. Many strategic topics are topics I'm dealing with, but I have an operational focus on SEO, growth marketing, shop development, web analysis, and any technical topic that might arise. We are a very small team, and I have to do many things. That's a disadvantage, but it's also an advantage because it's really fun. Our starting situation has been as follows. We are strongly performance-driven, historically speaking. Google Ads, affiliate marketing. We also have a premium brand, and where the partnership was ended this year, we depended a lot on that cooperation. Now we have a broader footprint. And as the market is narrowing down, we're always looking for new creative ways to grow. We had a major relaunch in April 2021 from Magento 1 to Magento 2 because the support expired for Magento 1. But we also had problems that the shop had an increasing amount of downtimes, and this never happens on Wednesday afternoon. It always happens between Friday and Sunday. And then you lose a lot of volume, and the shop we had before was much less comprehensive than the one we have now. A project like AX Semantics would not have been possible at that time. In 2021, we started with an MVP. This isn't the MVP you know from American sports, but this is the minimum viable product, as the name says. And we have been dealing with the initial problems for a year, and we're looking into what would be the next step that would make sense. And now we are on a good track. There are still things to improve, but this is a permanent process. And in the context of the relaunch, we had a real data chaos. This is also the reason why I'm here speaking to you, how we solved that. We had a collection of rigid data in the former shop, but also at the beginning, in the new shop at the beginning. You see the field equipment, that was a free text field in the former shop. And when data was migrated and marketing hadn't been involved for time reasons and for capacity reasons, this was basically migrated into one field altogether. And I'm going to show you in a moment what this looked like. And here you see that the description is very unappealing to the visitor. Of course, we have some additional information on the next page, but here it is that we had our texts, because you can get a lot of information. But if, as a user, you access that page, it seems slightly unprofessional. In any event, it doesn't give the opportunity to fall in love with a product. During data migration, as I mentioned already, the data was squeezed into one field. This is the current status, because we haven't switched over the system fully. But this means that you have many different pieces of information in one single field. And there are many parameters with the same meaning. For instance, you have four wheels system with a hyphen, four wheels system with two hyphens, but actually it all means the same. And if you generate content with AX Semantics, well, what we did at the beginning was, it meant a lot of work at the very beginning to compile the system in the way that we can work with it. How did we proceed? We drew up a text as we would like to have it, a Zero Halliburton hard-shell suitcase as a title. And I thought about the text. What would I like to see in terms of content as an online marketeer or as a visitor? And then I looked at the data and what I can do with the data. Size and volume, that was easy to be implemented. The duration of the travel, you could interpret them from the size of the suitcase. Series, I deleted that after thinking about it because we have so many different product ranges, so many series that would have been too much. We wouldn't have had the possibility to cope with that in our small team. Weight, wheels, material. This is also established in the system as individual fields. Compartments, that was included in the equipment field. And I don't know how many hundreds of variants we have. This is why in a first step, we proceeded according to categories. And we said that for suitcases, we will leave out the compartments. Here again, you see color, that wasn't a problem. Hand luggage on a plane, you could interpret that from the size. Combination lock, that was a free field, but the advantage is that you can look for that easily, search for it. TSA is a clear parameter. TSA combination lock, it says here. What did I do? Don't get scared. This is a part of our PIM, an Excel table. First of all, I identified relevant data, special price, previous price, created at. I threw all this out because it wasn't relevant for the text and still isn't. Prices are way too variable. We're not using them in the texts. But at the PDPE, you can see them. And then I looked at what do I need for my desired text, weight, height in centimeters, width in centimeters, and these were the parameters that I needed. I deleted everything that was different information than that. And then we touched on the equipment fields. In the context of data migration, they were divided in a way. Let's take this example of backpacks. We're no longer speaking about the suitcases here. I'm going to get back to that later on. But the backpacks lend themselves better to be described. Interior equipment, exterior, and top equipment. And this is what it looks like in our PIM. We've got 3 different parameters separated by a pipe in one field. And if you want to work with structured data, this is very unfortunate and needs to be tidied up. So I thought about how can I turn complex data into uncomplicated ones without causing too much work. In the first project, I tried it with a yes and no solution. In retrospect, I wouldn't do that again. Because exterior compartments, if you have various, here you could also mention how many instead of yes and no. I learned from that mistake. I wouldn't do it again that way. So I built an individual data structure. This is what it looks like. For instance, outside compartments, you've got side pockets and outside pockets, etc. In some data sets, you also have the number and you have to use that as an orientation. Or in a laptop compartment, you have a padded up to 14-inch, but you also have the padded laptop compartment without any further information. So the data was entered over time and the earlier data isn't as good as the later data. We tried to change that, but as we have almost 10,000 products in our shop, that's quite difficult. And this is why I used the PIM parameters and created this column. Just need to take a sip of water. Let us dig a little deeper here. Of course, you need to analyze how explanatory the data is. For instance, if it just says sporty, you look at the products, and very often this is a parameter someone wrote, but the product isn't that sporty. So we said we're going to ignore that parameter. High quality materials. So we have to say that we operate in a higher quality segment regarding price and quality. And this is why this high quality products or materials is something that is obvious. And the compartments, that's something that we didn't have in the traveling example, but for the backpacks, I already included that in our structure because I wanted to have individual texts on the individual compartments, and I knew that before. And there are things that you might forget, although you deal with data intensively, and suddenly you identify new topics. For instance, you could have thought about that they need to be, a backpack needs to be visible and reflecting lights. But I didn't have the idea at the time, so I was very happy that when I looked into the data and did some digging into the data, I was able to identify that example, particularly for bags you have, or backpacks or bicycle bags. This is interesting to have this feature. And I structured my data accordingly. But the problem is, if we receive new products and I do it again, it's quite a lot of work. But this structure that I invented has an advantage. That is that when I optimize in our PIM system, I know what fields I have to create and what to fill them with. I didn't know that before. Peter, our contact at AX Semantics, used to say, well, you just change it in the PIM and then it's done. But he didn't know our PIM system, which is very chaotic. And this is why I did what I just showed you, but I can translate it in a way that in the PIM system, I have the same fields that I produce for myself in Excel. And this is the next step I'm going to take. This is why it's important to mention that it's an ongoing process. You don't do that once and then it's done for good, but you learn step by step how to structure data, how to organize the data, and the journey continues. I spoke about content automation with a colleague. She says we want to do that once. That's what she said. Yes, you can do that, but the more understanding you develop for the data, the better the content you can generate. And the better you can enrich your data to improve the texts. Of course, our aim will be to have an API interface to connect the automated content so that the data would be made available in JSON directly. There would be direct communication between the shop and AX Semantics. But to this end, you need to optimize in PIM first. And this way, the way in which I proceeded helped me to do away with our chaotic structure and to build an efficient data structure that we can use to write creative content. And if I take the Excel data, let's say, I upload them to AX Semantics, and this is the result. This is an example and in this case, we had a lot of information available. The biggest challenge, particularly regarding the equipment, is this part where you have least text, the outside compartments, for instance, or the strap or the handle. That's quite difficult because it might just be one sentence. Here we've got many pieces of data, but very often you only have half of it. This is the highest workload, and at the end you just have small paragraphs. But I guess we are better than our competitors with the level of information. The competitors, if they deal with texts, they only focus on material size and color. And we always provide the most important information right away. So what did I do? Here you see the data. I have a node for a laptop, compartments, AX Semantics, and a switch in between. And in the switch, I've got all the data that is relevant for one column of my table. That is the equivalent. I could also have a condition. If it mentions 15-inch, for instance, it's for that sentence. But as we had a lot of chaotic data, there were many mistakes because it wouldn't really match. And this is why I use the individual parameters. And what we see here is that the sentence for the 15-inch laptop compartment, there are many parameters that go there, just because there are many different variants. And you saw that at the beginning, 14-inch, and you could see how many different ways there were. Here you see again, 15-inch laptop compartment, one 15-inch laptop compartment, a padded, etc. So it's quite simple to assign it to one individual sentence, if you do it that way. And our aim will be to have standardized parameters. So we only want to have the 15-inch laptop compartment, full stop. But it's going to take some while until we get there. What are we going to do with the phrase and the data? I've only been speaking about how we sorted the data, how we made them available. And now our creative work starts, where you've got text components. Let's take the example of the 15-inch laptop compartment. Very often the question is asked, how long is a 15-inch compartment? People really want to measure the compartment, the individual dimensions. This is standardized. This is why we can evaluate the height and the length and can indicate that right away. There are many queries with that, and this information gave us an advantage that we provided them. And there are many search inquiries that are formulated that way. And it's a very price-intensive market. This is why we are trying to convince with other features. And if we give the best information, this also convinces the customers. Here you see another example. There is also a 15-inch padded laptop compartment, and you can give the information that the laptop is well protected against any kinds of damage. And we interpreted all that from one single field. And we were able to draw up a very good text based on that. In conclusion, you have a relatively high number of phrases connected in a group, and this is turned into a variable. What I can recommend, one thing we didn't do, to add the triggers, whether or not there's an output. Because very often at the beginning, what happened was that I said that the laptop compartment doesn't exist, and then no text was created. It was an empty field, but I had a title which was called laptop compartment. And that was defined. If I had a trigger in there that we would have needed a laptop compartment, it would have disappeared. So we had empty titles. And you can add the variable that is the outcome under write. And this is the final outcome. This is the output of the text I showed you at the beginning. We are quite happy with it. And it was a well-chosen example. As I said before, there are examples where you just have a headline and no text because there was no information. This is why you need to use the triggers. What is the result? Because people, of course, ask, you've been working on that for a long time. It was a nice process, but what was the actual outcome of it? At this point, we have 3,582 products out of 9,807 that feature text. Until last week, we had more, and that I changed that radically because there are products of which we know that it's just a seasonal product or companies we don't work with anymore. So these products are going to be discontinued. And this is such that it's going to be easier for the search engines in medium term. And we want to avoid that we see product pages ranking first and we don't have the products anymore. The comparative period of time is 2021 to 2022, 1st of May to 13th of December. Why that? Because this is when we went live with our online shop. It was difficult to compare with the former shop, in the case of the former shop, because you couldn't filter properly the products. Here you see 31% of additional visitors that visit the product detail pages. This is good. This is better than the overall result. But of course, it's partly the lockdown, and you compare it to a year that was more normal, let's say. But this year, too, we had some slumps because of the war in Ukraine. And one thing I'm proud of is that we increased our sales by 76.87% with a PDP as an entry page. We weren't that good in that respect in the past, but this is a very good result, and it exceeds our expectations and hopes that we had at the beginning. Of course, I cannot give you the actual figures, but because that would be confidential. Here you see the visibility index. As compared to last year, we grew by 36%. We had to discontinue with one important product group. This is why we just dropped. But we knew that this was going to happen. And we can live with that because the product wasn't on stock anymore, and we're not going to sell it anymore. And we will recover soon because we will still see the full positive effect, because Google is very slow in changing the ranking. Our future plan is to do away with the errors. I'd like to redo the traveling product category. Peter told me that as well at the time. The initial project is one that you can throw out fully. And I'm going to do that, and I will start it all over again with the learnings from the past, from the first project. And then we've got the wallets. This is still pending. This will go live this year, before the end of the year. And personalization is something we're doing together with AX Semantics. We also collect data on whether or not a user is there for the first time, second, third, fourth, fifth. And we accompany the customer through the customer journey. Data optimization, standardization in the PIM system with the experience we've gained from the first project. We will do that next year. We will also insert pictures into the texts to have it be more interesting and more lively. And we have to optimize our pictures, but this will also be done next year. And the AX Semantics translation module is also interesting for us. It's not included though yet. So thank you very much for these impressive numbers. There are 2 questions already in the chat I've seen already. Maria, I'm going to ask the questions in a moment, but let me just start saying something else first. You invested a lot of time in data correction, and now you're saying you want to standardize it if possible. Have you already thought about the following? A lot of work. Do you want to reintroduce it through CMV into PIM? and to normalize the fields and give them back? How do you want to do that? Are you really sitting down and doing that manually? Before I standardize something in the PIM, we need more people on board. But when I presented that initially, I didn't have the real idea about the data volume. And now I can sit with people and say, this is what it's going to look like, and then I can upload it. So the preliminary work I did is worth gold, and it's going to speed up the processes. That's great to hear. There's one sentence that I really remembered because it impressed me. The customer doesn't have an opportunity to fall in love with the product. I loved that expression. Customer proximity, fall in love with the product. I like that. So what you did is text level 2. So you have H2 headlines. You guide the eye to the statements that drive conversion. You can use it as a hand luggage or not. And you have that in bold so that the eye is an eye catcher. So what made you do that? What is your experience? And what is the experience you brought to the table so as to have this level 2? And you really invest a lot of work in that. How did that happen? Well, we asked ourselves the question, what is important for the customers per category? Our customer service is done through WhatsApp, and all this goes through marketing. And we collect the questions. So what do the customers ask? And then we introduce that into the texts. So we know what the customers are interested in. Ah, the WhatsApp group, great. So you don't need a question tool, you just take the WhatsApp channel. Yes, of course, but in the second step, you evaluate the questions that there are in the different categories. And usually this gives you a good basis about the information the customer wants about the product. So the poor data turned you into a perfect AX Semantics user because you had so many workarounds that you needed to implement. And so congratulations, I really like it. It's one of my favorite projects. Maria has asked a question that I find very interesting. It also has to do with text planning and structure. As an online marketer, maybe you can say something about that. How did you calculate or define the length? What is the most efficient length for the ranking, I assume? How long does the text need to be? Do you have any metrics or any indicators you used? How did you approach that? We do the maximum possible, or what was your idea? We do the maximum possible text, but the idea is that there are many products that don't have so much data so that we can generate the maximum. This is why we have a lot of fluctuation in the length. And if I have a text online, I can analyze it after a while. There are great tools. Screaming Fork, for instance, you can say you have the X words on a page, show me the results for last year. And then you can evaluate the optimum length. We haven't had any previous experience because our product pages before that were highly unappealing and very short, right? It's just a few bullet points you showed us before, exactly. The second question Maria is asking, how did you work with seasonal products and products that are out of stock? Do you hide the pages? Or do you still have them in the index, or do you have them indexed in the first place? How do you deal with them? They have been indexed, and this is why we had this great deletion activity. 18,000 products, that was what we had before. We went down to 9,000 in total that we have now. They are not linked directly to the shop. You can find them in the search, but if they are out of stock, there are no links anymore prominently. We try to control it through the link flow, the relevant products. And I have the impression that it works quite well at this point. That was a good answer. Thank you very much for that, for this insight into the way you deal with it. Are there any other questions from the audience? I'll wait another second. You spoke about your prospects for the future, and I have a question on that. Internationalization, experiences with other countries. What do you have in store? What is the first country you're thinking about without giving away secrets? I think it makes sense to have a shop in English to have an experience about how the translation works, but nothing has been pre-established. These are just strategic ideas we're thinking about, and we'll have to see what's feasible, because that's quite a lot of work. Yes, of course, infrastructure and shipping rules and all that, and the returns, for instance, returns to the Netherlands. That's not all in all uncomplicated. This is more than just the content. That's what I mean. But the content at least is no longer the stumbling block. How long did it take to structure the data and to launch the AX project? Was that a one-man teamwork? Yes, it was a one-man team in this case. That's because of the size of the company. And quality assurance sometimes is missing. We sometimes adjust things during operations, and it always depends on the category and the experience. Let's say traveling, the first category, for 2 months, I was looking into the data. I didn't do anything else. I just tried to understand the information we have. At a later point in time, in the case of handbags or backpacks, where I already had some experience, I did it in half a week because I knew what I needed to look for, how to structure the fields. And this accelerated the process. I'm now working on the wallets, and it will not take me 2 days to structure the data. But that's against the backdrop that there's less information in the case of wallets as compared to backpacks that have straps and different compartments, etc. So sorting out the data, categorizing them, that's most of the work. Yes, I endorse that. I'd like to thank you very much again for being here right for Christmas, although you have a cold and we all don't have much time. I'd like to thank the viewers for being here. Thanks to Simultando for the translation work. Very well done. Thanks on our part. It's been a pleasure, like always. And thanks to the team who during the year managed to organize such an exciting meetup every fortnight. We see each other again in the new year. I think it's going to be on the 26th of January. We're going to start again with the next meetup. So I wish you all Merry Christmas, some recreational holidays, and a Happy New Year. And I hope that next year we'll be living in a more peaceful world than we have been in 2022. And I wish us all good health. So Kai, thank you very much again. Thanks to all the participants, and we see each other again in 2023. Merry Christmas to everybody.